How's it going, guys? Backyard Bass, I'm back with you here today. Today, we are going to go over Texas rigs. Alright, so, first thing, I want to give a huge shout out to Tackle Junkie 81. This guy right here helped me out, reached 100 subscribers Sunday night. I think I jumped up like almost 50, so thanks to that guy. He put it out there. All of his guys, all of his subs, they're phenomenal guys. They came through for me, subbed to my channel, so I really appreciate every one of you. If I happen to miss anybody subbing back to you, please comment down below. I'll get to you. If I missed you, I'm sorry. So today we're gonna go over the Texas rig, which I think is probably the most versatile technique you can do out there. I mean, you can do this thing in ponds, lakes, streams, and creeks, and rivers, and anything you can think of. You can throw a Texas rig. It's got to be probably one of the most simple things to do. First off, one thing we're going to get into, there's two different hooks that I throw a Texas rig on. Then I'll go into a little bit explaining why I throw each one of them. So the first one we have here is actually, this is if you can see that there, that is a 4/0 EW hook. This is one that I'm going to throw on my lighter Texas rigs. I'm going to say probably 1/4 inch, somewhere around, or quarter ounce, somewhere around there. Maybe a little bit smaller, just a hair bigger, not much. I'm not going to throw like a 1/2 ounce on this at all. But and the reason I can show you that I throw this on here, grab a bait here and I'll show you. This is like a perfect example here. This is the Rage Crawl, and I'll show you how I rig this here and why I use it. This is a lighter wire hook, so I'm not going to bury this hook in the bait. And with throwing lighter stuff, you don't want to do that. So if you look right here, you can see that hook's not sticking out of there at all. There's actually a little groove that it sets in right there. And I'll show you, when you go to set this hook, what happens is that comes right through there, no problem. Slides in and out. It'll last for a few fish like that. After a while, it kind of gets wore out and it'll start moving in and out pretty easy on its own. In that time, you might want to just kind of skin hook it in there just a little bit, just to hold it in there. But that's on the lighter wire hooks. Like I said, I'm going to throw a little bit lighter weights. That's something I'm going to fish probably around, a lot more around ponds, stuff that doesn't have a lot of, heavy cover in it, stuff like that. Getting in and out of bushes and stuff like that, it makes it a little easier too. You don't have that weight constantly dragging you down. And this is one bait, when I'm throwing this one, I don't peg. And the reason I don't peg this is you have that weight down here on top of that hook constantly. And what happens is that weight doesn't have anywhere to go. So when you're pulling it through the water, it's constantly shoving down on the head of this bait and kind of pushes that down. So being that's a lighter wire hook, it can't take a whole lot of abuse up there, that it just keeps working its way down there, and you'll constantly be having to pull it back up and re-put it back in there in that little slot and everything else. So I don't care for doing it on that. But on to the second one here. Let me pull this one back out here, show you guys. Second hook I use, this is something I'm going to throw on my bigger setups. It's the 4/0 Trokar flipping hook. My favorite hook of all time here. But anyway, the difference with this one is you've got that slot back here on the back. Now I'm going to go in just like I would with the other hook and bring it back out. And you can see right there, it's actually got that little bait keeper up here. So what you do is turn it around, you want to slide it up to there, right up to the top of that eye. Just to where the eye of the hook is actually just barely, I don't know if it'll focus on that there, but it's just barely sticking at the top right there. You can't see it from here, but it's right there. And then I'm going to actually hook just into the bait right there. I do not want that coming through. You can see it's not through there at all. And the reason being is that's a stout enough hook. When I set that hook, it's going to rip right through there. So this is going to be a little bit more versatile as far as going into brush and weeds and stuff like that. It's going to stay in that bait a lot better. Doesn't get hung up as much. But the reason I use this hook is for when I'm going to throw bigger weights. You're talking about like a 1/2 ounce tungsten here. I'll even go up to a 3/4 ounce on a Texas rig like that. These I do peg probably 99% of the time. I peg these, but as you can see with that hook right there, that weight hits that hook, the top of that hook, real good, and doesn't mess with the bait too much. So that's why I do that, and why I use that hook and that technique right there. But go into let's kind of go into what I actually use and which ones I use for what setup here. Get it out here without breaking everything. So this is my a little bit lighter wire hook setup. If I'm going to throw, like I said, probably 1/2 ounce or under 1/2 ounce typically, but this is a Lew's Speed Spool. I've got this one. This one's actually on a 6-to-8-1 gear ratio. It's a little bit slower than I like to fish with those, but it was just it worked at the time, and that's what I got. I've got it set up on, this is a Boo Garcia, the Veritas rod. This is a 7-foot rod, or 7.6 actually. 7.6, it's a medium heavy, but it's got a fast action tip. I can't really pull this back here and show you guys. I'm a little close here, but I'll try. But you can see here pulling on that. It's a pretty stiff rod up to about the 3rd or 4th eye there. So from there down, it's pretty stout. Now the reason I like using this one, for the simple fact, with that little bit more flex in that rod tip up there, is I'm going to feel a little bit more of that lighter weight in there, and you know, you can actually, you know, kind of feel it coming over the limbs good, and it's got a little spring action to it, so you can feel that a lot better than you can with a heavier one. Now you can see on here I've actually got, this is just a 3-ounce jig here, but that's, I don't really go much bigger than that with this. I get a really good feel on it. This reel and this rod are a pretty dang good combo. It's real light. I can feel just about everything with it, so I'm pretty happy with it. I can't complain much about either one of them. So that's for my lighter setup. Now we'll go into a little bit heavier setup here. All right, so this is my little heavier setup that I'm going to throw my 1/2 ounce or my 3/4 ounce Texas rigs on. This is a Duckett rod, the Ghost series. I bought these when they first came out quite a few years ago. I think they went for about $120 a rod. They're not too bad. I think they're still about $100 or $109 a rod now. But this is a heavy power rod. It's a fast action tip. It's a pretty stiff rod. Let's see if I can pull this down here to you. But you can see this one doesn't have nearly as much play as that other one did. But I don't want it to. I'm throwing that little heavier stuff. I don't want my rod tip sitting there bouncing up and down constantly. So this is a little bit stiffer. You can feel a little bit more weight on there. I've got this paired up. This is actually the Shimano, the Crotto K. I love this reel. I absolutely love it. This is I think this is actually an 8-to-1 or an 8-to-5 gear ratio. It's one of the higher end ones, higher end gear ratio ones. And the reason I wanted that was for getting in and out of cover fast. You know, if I'm going and I'm pitching and constantly going with the Texas rig, you know, I want to be pretty fast with it and pick up a lot of slack at one time. So that's why I went with that. And I absolutely love this rod and reel. It paired real well together. I'm sure there's better combinations out there, don't get me wrong, but for when I was starting out and buying this stuff, that Shimano was actually one of the better reels I've ever bought. And I think I paid about $179 for it. Like I said, the rod was I think 120 or whatever, but that's a great combination, especially if you're just going to be starting off or something like that. I know it's a little on the pricey side, but it is well worth it. I've had them for a while now. I haven't had any issues out of either one of them. So, but that's my setup. I will tell you, on my lighter setup, I go with 12-pound fluorocarbon. I throw the P line. I love that line. I've never had any issues with it. On my heavier setup, I usually go with about 17 or 20 pound. I have found that the 20 pound is actually almost too much. Um, and the reason I say that is on the Shimano, it's too much. That spool on there is a little too small for that 20 pound fluorocarbon. You can't keep a whole lot on there. And I have noticed that it tends to have a little bit more memory than what the 17 pound or the 12 pound ever did. And I don't know if maybe I've just got some bad ones or whatever, but that was about 3 different spools that I had that same issue with. So I'm thinking it's just that 20 pound mark that does that. But that's just my personal opinion there. But like I said, I do 12 pound on the smaller stuff. I do 17 pound on the other one. I've never had any issues out of them. Like I said, P-Line's been great to me. I don't have any issues with it. Other than maybe if you get hung up or stuck and you really stretch that line, make sure you check that line. Run your fingers down that line, because a lot of times what happens is that first couple feet of line that you were stuck at, it gets stretched in there real hard, and it will actually fray that line. So always make sure you check that. Run your fingers up to where you can't feel that stuff no more, and then probably go up another foot from that just to be safe. Snip it off there, retie. Don't keep using it. You're going to lose fish doing that, or lose whatever you're throwing. So just keep that in mind about that stuff. Going in a little bit into baits here. As far as Texas rigs go, I mean, there's not much you can't throw on a Texas rig. I keep it pretty simple for the most part. I'm going to go with either crawls, creature baits. Every once in a while, I'll throw like a Senko or something like that on there. I don't do it very often, but maybe like a 6-inch worm or something. Now, if you get something like a floating worm, that will make a little bit of a difference if you do it on your lighter tackle, your lighter rod and reel with maybe your quarter or 1/8 ounce. And the reason I say that is you run into like an 1/8 ounce or something like that, something pretty small. Actually, this one here I've got, this is actually an 1/8 ounce here. That's an 1/8 ounce tungsten there. I don't know if you guys can see that real good, probably not. But anyway, I'll show you compared to the 1/2 ounce here, since I figure out what I put it here. Well, oh, here it is. All right. So, if you can see here, that's a 1/2 ounce right here, and this is an 1/8 ounce. So, what I will do is I will take that 1/8 ounce and put it on a floating worm, and I will use that light wire EWG hook here. And what that happens is that nose kind of goes down, and that tail just stands up like this, and just kind of just waves in the water. Pretty similar to like if you're doing like a shaky head or something like that. It's just a little bit, you don't have your weight and your hook all in one, so it's a little bit more independent for swinging. And that's what I like. Like I said, I know that's just like the shaky head, but 9 times out of 10, your shaky heads are going to be one piece with the hook and the weight. So your bait is just going to stand there and stand straight up, and it's not going to have that independent movement. So it's going to move that whole weight and everything. So if you're into like pea gravel or something, that weight is down on the bottom, and it's actually going to be moving in that gravel and then end up laying over this way or that way or whatever. If you have it on this with the 1/8 ounce little tungsten weight, it's independent. So that weight's going to sit there, but that hook is independent enough to where it's going to sit there and that whole thing's going to stand up and wave back and forth, and there's nothing to hold it down to there. So I've had a little bit better luck with that, but you guys can try it and do what you want. But as far as other baits on the Texas rig, like I said, it's a pretty open book. I mean, you guys can throw just about anything you want on there. I would say for ponds, I'm going to stick more of the crawl baits, more of the finesse worms, stuff like that. Small beaver style baits. I'm not going to go to the real big stuff. I try to stay away from that unless I'm going to go to a bigger lake that maybe has pretty good population of bigger fish. That's when I'm going to start going to those bigger creature baits and beaver baits, stuff like that. So in ponds, I would definitely just keep it a little bit on a smaller scale. Like I said, the smaller weights too. I can tell you in my pond personally, I hardly ever throw a 1/2 ounce weight in there. I mean, it's a mud bottom. I've got structured and stuff, or covered fish and stuff like that, but throwing that 1/2 ounce, I mean, you're just, without a boat being there, your ass going to get stuck eventually, but even if it is pegged. But just stay on your little bit of your lighter side of your weights. smaller profile baits, you should have a lot better reactions with your fish doing that too. As far as the bigger lakes go, I'll step up to even like something like an original brush hog, you know, which it's a pretty decent sized bait. Either that or like I think the Pit Boss has a smaller version of their, oh, what is it? Their, hang on, let me see. It's the Pit Boss, but they've got a bigger version. And maybe it is called the Pit Boss too. It's just a bigger version. But I know the regular version is just like a 4-inch, and I think the big one's a 6-inch. So that's kind of where I would throw that in the bigger lakes, something like the 6-inch. Get a little bit bigger profile out there and let the fish see it. So other baits that I might throw on, let's just say bigger bodies of water with that 1/2 ounce or that 3/4 ounce. I'd like to do probably like 10.5-inch worms. I know a lot of guys are going to be out there in the summer right now. They're going to be Carolina rigging with them worms, which isn't a bad thing. That's a great idea. I do it plenty, but there's a lot of times, especially if you are new to fishing, if you're going to fish these bigger lakes, and you know that you're either with somebody that knows where there's a point that comes out that's got gravel on it, or you're just fishing by yourself and you know it's got gravel or something, and you're wanting to, where you would typically Carolina rig, you're not going to feel a whole lot on that Carolina rig starting out. You're not going to know. You've got one big weight down there and your worm's dragging behind it, and a lot of times what happens with the Carolina rig is they pick it up and they just kind of swim off with it. You don't really feel the bite. You just see your line moving. Well, for somebody that's new to fishing, they're not going to understand that, and they're not going to know what's really going on most of the time. So if you could do it with a Carolina rig, use your 1/2 ounce or your 3/4 ounce. Everything's right there in one. You're going to feel that bite. You're going to feel it immediately. You know, you're going to feel the bottom a lot more. You're going to know what's going on down there. To me, it's a lot better presentation to somebody that's new doing this, and show them what they're feeling, and they can kind of make up their own mind of what's going on down there. If it's coming across pea gravel, they're going to feel every little bitty skip across that gravel. Or if it's, boulders or riprap or something like that, they're definitely going to feel that. When they hit a soft bottom, they're going to know it. It's going to feel mushy. So I would definitely say if you're new into doing this and going to bigger bodies of water, that is an excellent choice to have there. So that's about all I got for you guys today. So until next time, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the like button, and I'll see you guys later. Thanks.